Good morning. Welcome to this Power Platform webinar. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Dennis. I am a consultant at Ultima. I work in the professional service area and I work mainly with Microsoft products, pretty much any Microsoft product. So my background is in primarily SharePoint. I've worked with that product for probably 15 years right now. But yeah, the last 3 years, I've been focusing more on Power Platform as well. And that's where, yeah, this webinar today comes into play. So today I will talk about the Power Platform and yeah, more specifically Power Pages. For people who are in the sometimes visiting the Power Platform communities or on Twitter, I use the handle @piscornovus. So if you want to reach out to me after this meeting or you have any questions, yeah, feel free to use that Twitter handle or ask questions on the Power Platform forums. So that's me. So the agenda of today. Today I'm gonna focus on a couple of things. One is I'm briefly gonna talk about the highlights of the Wave 2 release plans. So what Microsoft always does is they have 2 release wave plans per year. Or yeah, it's across years, but it's 2 periods. So release wave 1, which is up until what is it, the August September area, or the month, and then they have a second release wave, which is from October till March next year. A couple of months ago they released these plans, and I'm gonna just highlight a couple of features which stood out for me. Again, these are still plans, so I can't demo them to you, but yeah, I can shortly or briefly talk about them. And then the second part of today's webinar is Power Pages. So I'm gonna talk about what Power Pages is, and then I've prepared 3 demos to show you to give you a high-level overview of what the capabilities are of this new product. As you can see, the 3 demos are about creating pages in the Design Studio. I'm gonna show you a short example of integrating your DATAVERSE data in that kind of website. And then lastly, I'm also gonna show you how you could approach it from a more coding point of view. So if you're more a developer, then you could even use Visual Studio Code to build these kind of websites. So that's demo number 3. So that's the plan for this webinar for this hour. So yeah, let's kick off. So first of all, yeah, like I said, Microsoft has these release waves. We're currently in the release wave 1 of 2022. They're kind of wrapping it up, and then in October, the new release wave starts again. So they start releasing all these kind of planned features. This is all available as information on the Microsoft website. As you can see in here, this is the short link. I think we can also share that as a separate link after this webinar. I will contact Megan about that. But this is a website, but at the same time, you can also download it as a PDF file for the people who want to read it on their e-reader or something like that. But this plan has all the listed features with their estimated delivery times. So it would be in some features will be first delivered in preview, and some will directly be generally available. So there are these kind of timelines in this document and in this plan as well. But looking at that plan, these are the highlights for me. So Power Pages, obviously, I'm going to show you some things today, so I'm not going to list them in this slide. But for example, in Power Apps, a couple of highlights for me was the DATAVERSE table integration in the studio. So now if you want to modify your table or add for example, add a column or change a view or these kind of things, you have to navigate away from your Power Apps Studio, which as a maker can be annoying or not so productive. So for me, that's a highlight in the new release plan. But also from model-driven apps, the possibility to quickly create Power BI reports. Again, you could do that now, but it would be creating it in Power BI and directly and then embedding it into Power Apps. But now Microsoft has an option to quickly create it from your model-driven app view itself. So that's again a very powerful and from my point of view, more efficient way of making this kind of reports. So that was one of the highlights for the Power Apps. Obviously, there are a lot more for Power Apps, so definitely have a look at the plan, but these two stood out for me. And then looking at Power Virtual Agents, which is the chatbot product of Microsoft. Nowadays, these chatbots are driven by people triggering them by keywords. So you interact with this kind of chatbot by typing a question or a message, and then the conversation starts. What they now announced in this release plan is that you can also trigger the topics by events. So that sounds very interesting, because then suddenly you can trigger it by all types of other events instead of the user typing and taking the initiative. So that looks on paper like a very interesting feature. Again, it's not there yet, so I can't judge if it works very well or not. But the concept sounds very interesting, so that's why it stood out for me. And then secondly, list variables. So at this point in time, you can create lists, you can create custom lists, but you can't consume them in like questions in the chatbot. That's a very challenging thing to realize at the moment in the product. What they're gonna offer is that you can use and consume these lists. So you can collate a list of questions or answers, and then you can consume that in the questions within the Power Virtual Agents. So that will make the conversation and the question answering logic a lot easier, because you can just define it in a list. So that's for me also looks at the first glance as a very interesting new option. So that's Power Virtual Agents. Again, these are only two. The list of improvements is very long. It's like 10-15 new features. So definitely, again, have a look at the release plan. Power Automate, I think the first one, connecting to other environments for DATAVERSE, that was not only an improvement from Microsoft side of things, but that was, I think, a very big demand from the whole community and everybody who's using DATAVERSE, generally speaking, because in the legacy connector this is possible. So there is a DATAVERSE legacy connector, and a lot of customers, a lot of partners were still using that connector because of this limitation in the new DATAVERSE connector, which wasn't capable of connecting to other environments. So now Microsoft is gonna also introduce that in the new DATAVERSE connector, which probably will mean that a lot of customers and a lot of people, generally speaking, will move away from this legacy connector. So again, stood out for me. I think this is a good one. And then secondly, the editing experience for expression creation. It's at the moment it can be sometimes a bit painful to create or write these kind of expressions, and they heavily invested in that. I've already seen it in preview, so this is actually one of the examples where you could see it already in full effect in a preview setting or in a experimental feature setting. But yeah, it's definitely one which makes creating Power Automate flows, cloud flows, a lot easier. And then lastly, Power BI. In Power BI, again, they also have a lot of different new features they announced, but the ones which stood out for me were the possibility to work together, author data sets. So now it's like you create a data set, then you can consume it and that's it. And with this feature, they say you could modify this data set, work together on it, create measures, amend it. So yeah, that sounds very powerful. And then the second one, which I thought, yeah, that's very useful, not only for me as a maker, but also for end users, is that you could subscribe to reports with filters. So at the moment, you can only subscribe to the reports with the default view. But yeah, not everybody wants to see all the data. So being able to pre-filter it, add slices to it beforehand, and then subscribing to that filtered report, yeah, that sounds a lot more useful. So yeah, again, great new feature. Looking forward to that. So again, that's in a nutshell the highlights for me, for us. Again, feel free to go to this link and have a look yourself. Also, definitely watch out for the conferences. So there's a Power Platform conference in a week or so that definitely will highlight this kind of new features as well in there. So watch that as well. But yeah, that's the plan for pretty much next year. So the next part of the webinar is all about Power Pages. So what is actually Power Pages? So in a couple of months ago, Microsoft announced, I think it was during Build, there's this new product of the Power Platform family, which is called Power Pages. And a lot of people were, great, new product, but some people were like, wait a minute, isn't this Power Apps portals? So it is kind of. So before, Microsoft had Power Apps portals, which was a module within Power Apps where you could create websites with all this kind of logic. And what Microsoft did is they improved it and added more features to it, and then created it into this own separate product called Power Pages. So that's in essence what it is. So to highlight it, what do you have if you would use the product Power Pages? You would have the capability to create low-code websites, which means you can create a website by using a simple authoring experience within a new design studio. So that design studio is, for example, wasn't available in the Power Apps portal module. Within this product, it has responsive rendering capabilities. So for example, you can create sections, and within that section you can use pixels for the width and height, but you can also say it's flexible, it's responsive, so you can use percentages, all these kind of things which people who create websites are familiar with. You will have that in this Power Page product as well. It also has development capabilities. So although it's saying it's for low code type of people, or people who like to configure stuff and don't have a background in coding, you can code with this product. I will show that in demo number 3. And it also has security and governance features. So in demo 2, I will show you that. So you can, for example, integrate with your DATAVERSE tables, but obviously that's a database and you don't want to show all the data, and you only want to show subsets. So that's where permissioning, table permissioning, web roles come into play. So there are security concepts. And then lastly, you can integrate it with the rest of the Power Platform. I don't have a specific demo for that, although you could argue that DATAVERSE is for the Power Platform, so I can't have that maybe, but I can, yeah, you could, for example, if you are storing or inserting data via your website in DATAVERSE, then obviously you could trigger a flow, or you can build an app around that data, and then suddenly you're integrating it with your website. So there are definitely integration capabilities with this product. So that's what Power Pages is. So let's go into the demo stuff. So to set the scene, one of the things, and that's also what I just highlighted, is that Power Pages has this new design studio. So I was definitely planning on showing that to you. So this demo is all about that. So the whole purpose of this demo is to show you what type of features you have in this design studio, how you could create, for example, a page, and then what building blocks you have to create this page. So what I will show you in this demo is creating pages yourself, what type of layout you have. I won't cover all of them, but I will definitely use a couple of them. So you can start from blank, you have a landing type page layout, a regular page, a sub page, and you can even upload your custom layouts. Then you have navigation, so you can manage your navigation and by using these pages. And then within a page, obviously you need building blocks for content on the page. So within a page you have things like sections, so you can divide the page up in sections like 1, 2, or 3 columns. You can also have the 1/3 left, 1/3 right kind of thing. And then you have spacers, which can visually divide up the page into certain sections. So I'll show you that. Spacers definitely useful also when you use it like a background color. So I'll also show that example. And then lastly, obviously the content itself. Content is king within websites. So you have different components. Almost tempted to say web parts, because the look and feel of building this kind of things looks a lot like SharePoint. And again, my background is in SharePoint, so yeah, I'm almost tempted to say web parts, but it's components in this product. But you have things like a text component, a button component, an image component, but also more rich media type of things like a video, or again the integration things like a list, which is a DATAVERSE list, or Power BI report. So yeah, that would be the first demo. So let's start with that demo. So before I go into the creation of pages and the authoring of a page, let me first start off by going to the product itself. So if you want to go to Power Pages, you can go to powerpages.microsoft.com. So nowadays for every product they have this like subdomain make dot. So yeah, this is the easiest way of navigating to that Power Pages environment. If you don't have one, you can start a trial, a 30-day trial. You need a trial environment for that. And if you're really starting from scratch, then what you could do is you can say create site, and then you can use a site template. And in this case, I have 2 sites. I use this blank design, and for the other one, I use this schedule meetings design. But that's my starting point. I won't do that right now because it does take some time to provision it. So I wouldn't recommend doing that in a demo. I'm not going to do that now. Otherwise, we will need to wait for 15 minutes or so. So I did that before this webinar. So as you can see, I now have two sites. Today I'm going to use this Fabricam travel one. If you want to edit it, you just click here on the edit button. If you want to see it because it's a public website, so you guys can also navigate to it from your own browser. Yeah, you can click on it via this URL link. So this is my public website, which I'm going to use for today's demo. Yeah, as you can see, it has some navigation. This is the landing page, which has some sections. I have this pages navigation node, which has subnodes. So things like subpages are in here. All things I'm gonna show you today. So yeah, this is the site. So let's go into the authoring experience. Again, these are my sites. I will just click on the edit, and this will open up our design studio. And the most important thing, or the important to start with, is that you have these 4 workspaces. So you have the pages one, which again is to create your pages, manage your pages, all these kind of things. Styling, which is more for, yeah, if you want to implement your style guide colors from your company, or you have specific fonts you want to use. I'm not going to cover this area, but yeah, it's good to know that this is possible to configure this. The data area, which I am going to use today. So I've prepared a list with an account table and also a webinar table. And then lastly, you have a setup. So this is a website. So you have some other capabilities as well, which you can configure. Again, I'm not going to cover that in more detail, but yeah, obviously you can connect a top-level domain to it. So yeah, this doesn't look like an address which you would normally use for a public website. So you can connect your own yeah, top-level domain to it, or your domain to it. And then additionally, you could also set certain identity providers. So today I'm going to show you things for anonymous users, but you can also have this kind of almost like extranet scenario where you have logged on users who have certain permissions to only see certain things within your website. Again, I'm not going to cover that, but yeah, you can see you can also configure certain identity providers for that and for that setup. So that's in the setup section, in the setup the workspace. So these are the 4 workspaces. Yeah, let's start with pages. So yeah, as you can see here, you have a preview pane, which makes obviously the editing experience a bit easier, or the editing canvas, and then you have the you have the preview pane. So let's have a look at this pages one. So what I could do is I could create a new page like this, and I would say webinar demo, and then like mentioned on the slide, you have different options. So you have standard layouts and even custom layouts. You have the option to add it to the navigation here, or to let it be an unrelated page, which would fall in this other pages section if you uncheck this. And what a layout is it's merely a starting point. So you would have a certain setup for sections. It would already include some components. So yeah, if you're very certain that you would need certain components or certain sections, you could choose layout. I'll always like to start with blank, because then yeah, you're more flexible. So I will do that right now with this one as well. So I'm clicking add. What you can see is it inherits the header, the footer, because obviously that's what you want across a website, but it just has one section without any components. So this is where the authoring can start. So this is a 1-column section. So within this 1-column section, I could start adding a component like text. Within the text, I have capabilities like rich text formatting. So I can say hello world. it's just paragraph text, but you can also make it a heading, and then you probably understand what rich text stuff is, but yeah, you can make it bold, you can use italic, all these kind of options. The orientation can be changed, so now it's left centered, left oriented, but you can make it centered. All these kind of things which you expect from nowadays rich text editing. So that's the text web part. You can also have other components like a button, which you could use to link to other pages, or maybe even outside of your website, or a document, or these kind of things. And what else do you have? You can have images in here, and then you have a media library. Within that media library, you can upload your own images. So this is what I did. I uploaded this image, and then I can reuse it. As you can see, you also have options to resize it. So you also have cropping experiences, all these kind of things. So yeah, it's pretty easy to create such a page. And then what you can do is now it's here listed as one of the last pages. So if I would sync this up to my sync to configuration, so it's available for all authors, then you would see it hopefully show up in here. If it doesn't, then it's a public website, so sometimes caching plays a role. Now it shows up directly, so that's good. But if it doesn't, then the Control F5 refresh, so the cache refresh in your browser would help with that. So if you now click on it, you can see hello world, my image and my button. So yeah, pretty easy. Like Marshall says, a simplified authoring canvas console. So yeah, I agree with that. But let's say you don't like that, you want it underneath these pages, then you have this concept of, first of all, you can move it up. So you would be now in this position, but if you want to make it a subnode, you can also turn it into a subpage by clicking this, make this subpage. Excuse me. And similarly with existing subpages, you can obviously turn it into promote it. So if I would do that with this, it would be its own page in this navigation. So yeah, that's great. That's a good option. And then lastly, like I said, it's now all related to this main navigation. If you don't want that, if you think, this should be a page which I need, but it shouldn't be highlighted in the main navigation, then you can move it to other pages. And then suddenly it vanishes from this main navigation. So yeah, that's great. So that's how you can create pages. That's how you can add components to this page. What I didn't show is in this, it's kind of, I don't know, dull. I don't know if that's the best word, but sometimes people want some flexibility in how the page is authored. They want to have certain areas in here, and that's where sections comes into play. So this is now one column. Maybe you don't like that, so then you can change that layout to like 2 columns. So you could have like an image, and then the text could be on the right hand side, but that's then the first section. So what you could also do is to make it look more playful or more visually engaging, is you could have a section underneath here with 3 columns, and then you could even have like a spacer in between. And obviously this doesn't show anything, but what you could do is within that spacer you could use one of the brand house style guide coloring, which you're using in the style workspace, to give it like background color. And then if I would preview that in my desktop, you would see, yeah, it really acts up as a divider and breaks up the page. And again, this is probably not the most visually exciting page, but yeah, it could definitely help with creating, yeah, better, nicer looking pages. So let me see if I have another example. No, this is stuff from another demo. Yeah, so this is an example of where it probably looks a bit more visually engaging. So in here I have a text web part, then I use the video, and then in this spacer section I gave it a background color from the styling, but I also used a call to action button, a button. So suddenly that button is really highlighted because it also has a background color, and then underneath I have some other information which probably maybe is less important. So this could be an interesting way of, yeah, creating your page, designing it in a way that it's, yeah, visually more attractive. So yeah, I definitely wanted to show you that, how you could use these kind of sections and, yeah, all these kind of different components. So yeah, that's the first demo. So just to go back to the slides and recap. So again, what I just showed you was how you could create and edit pages. I showed you how you could use the start from blank layout. Again, definitely make use of the other layouts because they already have components and sections within them. So that could be a great way to start. I showed you the concept of main navigation pages versus other pages. So pages which are linked to the navigation and pages which are basically not linked to the navigation. Sorry, I showed you sections. So I used the 1 and the 3 columns section as an example. And then I showed you a couple of components, the text button and image ones. So yeah, hopefully that's clear how you could create these kind of pages. So let's go to our second demo of today. So yeah, one of the things which makes this product, in my opinion, very powerful is the fact that it's part of this bigger platform, Power Platform. So it's part of a suite. And what Microsoft has done is it's given you a lot of integration options, and one of them is yeah, the option to use DATAVERSE tables in your website. So yeah, what I'm gonna show you today is I've prepared this custom DATAVERSE table. So it's a table in a database, and that table consists of yeah, it's a webinar table. So what you expect from this kind of table is it's listing all our future webinars. So it has the webinar title in it. It has the description of what we're gonna discuss in the webinar in it as a column. It has the date, when will this webinar happen. That's a column in this table. And I think I'm forgetting one. But yeah, that's basically the table. And I'm gonna consume that data on our public website, or of this example. So I'm gonna use a list component for that. And then obviously, because it's data coming from DATAVERSE, access needs to be set. So obviously not somebody who is an anonymous user who visits a public website doesn't have access by default to this kind of data, because it's part of an restricted environment. So we have to set certain permissions to be able to show that on our public website. So that's where table permissions and web roles come into play. You can already see that, by the way, here in the screenshot. So this is actually the screenshot of setting this permission, setting this permissioning. So that's the context, or just setting the scene of this demo. So let's go back to our demo environment again. So let's close this one. So what I've done again as preparation of this demo is I've created this overview webinar subpage. As you can see, it's using two sections. So this is a 1-column section, and this is a 2-column section. And then in this 1-column section, I've added a text web part, which is using a heading, and a second text web part, which just has a paragraph, which states below is an overview. Yeah, you can read it, an overview of the webinars. So before I start and adding this list component, let me show you what I did in DATAVERSE. So I'm a Power Automate kind of guy, so I always like to go to make.powerautomate.com. And yeah, make sure you're in the right or in the same environment as your Power Pages portal. So if it's in a different environment, yeah, then you won't be able to interact with those same tables. So make sure you select the right one. So here in this data section, hopefully it's clear, by the way, let me magnify it a bit. Here in this data section, you have this management of tables. And this will open up Power Apps actually. So in hindsight, I probably should have gone to make.powerapps.com. That's probably the quickest way of going to this interface. Let me magnify it again. So what I've done is I've created this custom table. So in here you have this plus button, new table. This is a way of creating a new table. Again, I've done that beforehand, so before the meeting. And as you can see, there's only one, so it's easy to navigate to. So I've created this webinar table. And within this webinar table, I created a couple of columns in the schema. So here in the schema, you could see a couple of columns which are of interest for us. So I've created this date time. So you can all see that the custom columns, they have the publisher prefix. So in the CR757, that's the publisher. So there's a webinar date time, webinar description, a name, and a title. Yeah, and that's about it. So yeah, I was right when saying these were the 3 columns I created. So that's the schema, and I've inserted a bit of data. So you have this whole edit experience here. So when I click here, edit a new tab, I can manually insert this. Obviously, if you have a lot of data, you can also do that in bulk. You have web API endpoints. You have all this kind of possibilities to manage this data. So let me show you what I have from a data point of view. So basically, these are the 2 records I have in my table. So introducing Microsoft Power Pages, our webinar of today, coincidentally, the date time when the webinar started, and then one of our webinars of next week. I added that in here as well. So the Join Our Defense League against cyber attacks, and then the actual date and time, start date, and then a description of, yeah, basically a short description of the webinar. So this is interesting data which I want to show on our website. So what I can do, let me close off the data first side of things, is in here I have this data workspace, and I can interact with that same data. So in here you can also see the webinar, that the webinar custom table is available. So that's great. So yeah, definitely be aware of this data workspace. And then in what I can do in our page is, when I prep that table, I can start using it. So in here, I can consume it via a list component. So in here I have a list, and I will now add it. And as you can see, it already has an existing list. So I actually done that before before the webinar. But typically what you would do if you've never used this table before in your website is you would go to new list, you would select a table, and then you would also select a view. So typically you would have either one of the system-wide views like active accounts, or a pre-filtered view, which probably makes more sense for public website data. So you could even have your own views, but that's what I basically did. And then I clicked OK, and then it's available for this list component. So in this case, I'm just gonna use the existing one, edit list, and then click OK. So I think I did that now, and then I'll preview it. And if all goes well, yeah, you will see this. So obviously this is not what you want. Generally speaking, in a website that an end user sees, you don't have permission, but this is to show you that creating the table and consuming it in a list component, that's not sufficient because it's still data from your tenant. You don't want to just share that with anybody in the world. So that's why you have to do or execute the third step, which is setting the access permission levels to it. So that's where this permissions button comes into play. So you can click on permissions. As you can see, this one doesn't have any permissions yet. So it's a green field for this table. But if you already would have set this up, you would see the existing table permissions in this panel as well. But for this one, I would just create new permission. I would say in this instance, I want to give permissions to anonymous users. So let me do that. Anonymous table permissions. This is the table we are talking about. It has pre-selected it, so that's good. I'm going for global access. You can make it more granular if you want, but I won't bother with this right now. And then in this instance, I just want to read it. So or give read permissions to certain roles. And in this role, in this instance, that's for anonymous and authenticated users. So I'm gonna add these two. So that's the setup. Then I'm gonna save it. So this means that for these users, they should be able to read whatever is in this table. So definitely be careful with that. Think about your design, what you want to share with the outside world or authenticated users. But in this instance, yeah, I'm fine with that because it's just webinar data. It's just an event list, basically. So I'm going to sync it. So it's also available with my other bar page authors as well. And then when I hit refresh, or maybe even control refresh if that's needed, then suddenly you can see this data. Again, I used the active webinar overview, which is an out-of-the-box system-wide view. And as you can see, it's only showing name and created on. So in hindsight, I probably should have created my custom view where I'm also showing the date and time of the webinar, the title, all these custom columns. So that would be, again, in that configuration of that view, and in that view selection when you are selecting it in the list component. But hopefully you understand that that's just a view setting. So that's an example of the webinars of a custom table. I also created an example with, I believe it was accounts. So just to show you another example, in here, I used the accounts table. And as you can see in the permissioning, this is the existing view accounts table permission. And when you click on it, on the table permission, you can see the name is view accounts, it's read, and again, it's anonymous and authenticated users, which means if I would go to my first list page, you would see records of 2 accounts. Again, this probably doesn't make sense in an anonymous users kind of setup. This would be probably more an authenticated user setup. I think that this type of data makes more sense in that kind of scenario. But hopefully you understand the concepts of how you could use it, how you can set this up. So let's go back to the slides again. So just to recap what we've done in this second demo, I've showed you how you can create a DATAVERSE table, custom DATAVERSE table, how you could consume that in a list component on a Power Pages page, and then lastly, how you can make sure the right people have the right access to this data, so how you can safely secure it with table permissions. So that's a summary of the second demo. So let's go to our last demo of today, which should be a bit more of a quick one. So I know a lot of people like clicking, configuring, but obviously there's still an audience which are more into coding. And since this is a website, it has a lot of coding bits in there as well. Things like HTML, CSS, for markup, all these kind of things. So sometimes it just makes more sense to also manage this via an integrated development environment like Visual Studio Code. Luckily, Microsoft does give you that capability. So one of the things which you can do is you can use Power Platform CLI, which is a command line interface. You can install that on your machine, and with that you can use command line code like PAC auth, PA portal list, PA portal download. So as you can see, it's still inherited from the previous name of the product, Power Apps portal. But you can use these commands to download your website on your local machine, make changes to it, and then afterwards, when you're happy with the changes within your Visual Studio Code, upload it back again. So yeah, I will show you that in this demo as well. So let's go back to my machine. So sorry about that. So first of all, what you need to do is, I showed you the PAC auth list, all these kind of commands. So let me first of all run the PAC auth. So this command expects you first to install the command line interface. Or not. Sorry. I forgot the part of adding something to the command. My bad. Sorry about that. You want to auth against an environment. So first you want to look up your environment address. So again, this is my Power Pages demo, and here you have an environment URL. So that's the most important thing which you need to authenticate against your environment in this command. I thought I copy pasted it, but I guess not. Yeah, there it is. And I still made a typo. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, let's skip that. So what I did beforehand is I've created this auth, or I've set this authentication already. I think it doesn't like that, or I'm doing something wrong. But when you've set up that authentication and it works, then what you could do is you can run that download command, and when you download that, it will store this whole structure of your website on your local system. So as you can see in here, the pages which we used before, so that my first list page, that's solely available as code. By the way, let me see if I can magnify this a bit. Where are you? Zoom, 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 where are you? Can't find my zoom. Okay, hopefully it's clear in the view here. So yeah, you can see it's HTML here, and for example here, this subpage 1 demo, it has a heading here. So what we used by clicking in the text web part, you can actually also write that by just using basic HTML tags like h2 paragraph. So if you would prefer that, you can amend it in here. So again, to show you the same page side by side, hopefully that's clear. So this is subpage 1. Subpage 1. Here you can see our h2, and then here's also our h2. And then here I have the text even via Visual Studio. I think I forgot the word code, so let's write this. Then I save it, and then hopefully again, don't know why my command didn't work earlier, but let's try again. Yeah, okay, it was already authenticated, so my bad for the earlier messing up the demo. So as what you can see right now, what it's doing, it's uploading all this data, and it's basically just trying to find the deltas. So in here it said uploading completed for a web page, so pretty much only changed the web page. And then in here, hopefully, if all goes well, it's still a demo. Yeah, it's not here yet. I think sometimes it helps to just close this and then open it up in preview again. I did change it to subpage 1, right? Yeah, subpage 1. Oh, this is the first list page, so that's definitely not the one we're looking for. Yeah, so now the word code is also here. So as you can see, that's more a developer kind of experience. So some people just like editing it in Visual Studio Code over this, and obviously from a efficiency point of view, yeah, it's very easy to just copy paste this and then paste it underneath here. Like it could speed up the process of creating pages. Also, this you can put this in a code repo, a code repository. So suddenly you can make use of basically application lifecycle management concepts. You can commit it to a code repo. Other people can get those changes, commit their own changes, and suddenly you can work together from one code repository. So this definitely could be very useful. It could be another approach of developing your website. So yeah, that's why I definitely wanted to share this with you. I think we only have a couple of minutes left, so I think that should be about it. So let me just quickly recap what I showed you in the last demo. So the last demo was using Visual Studio Code, so more coder kind of approach. I used the Power Platform CLI. Again, this is a package which you need to install separately to be able to do what I just showed you. I tried to use backauth, which didn't work. Sorry about that. I did use the PA portal upload, which did work luckily. And obviously I shared with you how you could amend this kind of page from a Visual Studio Code, which you can also see in the screenshot. So that was the last demo. Thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed this webinar. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us, and hopefully see you next time in one of our next webinars.